You want to share it? Good morning, Facebook folks. We will be with you in just half a moment.
Good morning.
And then we are going to go.
Share.
I'm going to go right there. And we'll go ahead and start streaming. Good morning, everybody. You are listening to My LoSo Lifestyle with Mary Shep here on 216thenet, 216thenet.com. You can go to the website, click Listen Live, or you can download the app, 21.6 The Net. Just look for that on your favorite app store. Works on any smartphone, any tablet, any pad. You can listen anytime you like. Now, here we are with Mary Shep and My LoSo Lifestyle. Mary, what's going on today?
So, I think I've said this before that once you put out yourself out on Facebook or the internet or YouTube or the radio, you get a lot of messages, and I got called out for not being an expert. There's no shock there. I am not an expert. I just love food and everything about food. It was a call out on the keto diet. And, you know, I have to rewatch the show, but I'm pretty sure I didn't call it crap food. But
No. You did. I saw that call out, and I'm like, do I respond to it?
It didn't. Yeah. I mean, it kind of came off
I
shitty,
didn't,
but it wasn't.
I didn't respond to it because, I went back and listened, and actually it was just a vague reference to the keto. It wasn't in depth, and I listened to it. My wife does the keto thing. I was fine with what you said. Keto is indeed remarkably involved.
Right.
We all know that, but we weren't really talking about the keto diet. We were talking about all different kinds of diets.
Correct.
And of course, the low sodium lifestyle. That's what this is all about. So I just kind of looked at that and to be fair, it really wasn't, that was not the subject of the show.
Right.
It was just reference to.
And the comment itself was fine, because obviously people take too much stock in things that are said on the internet. Everybody gets butthurt over everything. It's like, I know the person, we're friends in other groups, and we had chatted past that, so you can read the posts past that, and it was fine. But it is true that I'm not an expert, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that. And the whole point of the conversation around the diets and all of the whole point of this show in general is just A, to help people, but B, when you make such a significant life change, regardless of what it is, when you cut out salt, when you go on a keto diet, a lot of people with that structured of a diet, they do it wrong, and they go, well, Facebook said did this, or YouTube said do that, or my neighbor's doing it and they lost 62 pounds, but they do it this way, so I'm going to do that. Well, the whole point is you need to do it under some kind of expert guidance, even though doctors aren't always the greatest thing on the face of the planet. I'm not a huge fan, but they spend years and years and years learning about this stuff.
And I mean, that's how I went about. I mean, I've leveled out. I've stayed pretty steady since July, but I dropped just a hair under 40 pounds since the first of the year. But I did it doing low carb, but it was not the Atkins thing. It was not the keto diet. It was just literally not having more than 20 carbs per day, 20 grams of carbs, not 20 carbs.
Right.
Can you imagine? I'm going to have 20 carbs today.
Oh, that'd be a heavenly day, wouldn't it? That would be a really heavenly day.
Like 2 dozen donuts. Hey, there's a good new diet. The 2 dozen donut diet for you. But and again, really, your show last week was really more about iodine.
It was.
And that's really what it was centered about. You want to give just a real quick recap? I know you got quite a few notes for today here. So
I mean, that last week's show was about iodine and about, everybody says, well, when you lose the salt, you lose the iodine. And it's a lot of in the older generation, and now subsequently just by force of habit, that people eat table salt, which is iodinized salt. And you really do get enough, especially if you're a cranberry eater, which, as you know, if you watched last week's show, you'll see you can get enough iodine through food.
Mhm.
And if you're not, you can take supplements. So saying that you're going to get all your iodine through salt or adding table salt is ridiculous, because you'd have to overdose on how much salt. I shouldn't say overdose. That's a bad word to use. You're going to consume way more salt than you should eat in a healthy diet just to get the iodine. So you're better off getting it through real food than you are through adding salt to your food.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it's a lot of my stuff that I know. It's purely there's a website called PubMed.
Okay.
And when you Google something and you look up something that you get a lot of misinformation, and it gets worse and worse every day, because of the fact that it's purely a search engine. It's not a fact checker. So if enough people post that you should eat cow poop every day because you're going to lose 10 pounds, guess what? The first 10 searches are going to come up. You should eat cow, the cow poop diet. And it's obviously something you might want to research a little bit more.
Something, an all new meaning
Hey,
to
Dad.
the Krabby Patty term.
Yeah, right. But you got to do your own research. And PubMed is an actual the medical publications, so case studies, and obviously you have to have the ability to read some of these documents, because it's not written in layman terms. It's not written in some fashion that you or I would see, where it's
right.
Eating low salt and the result is this. It literally is written as in a chemical study, and the protein inhibitors and blah 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 blah. So you either need to be in a medical field to understand it, or you need to at least have a base knowledge. So, but you can look up those things and see. And a lot of times, even though I'm not in the medical field, just purely by going to sites like that and researching something of the nature of, if you like the keto diet, and you can look and see how many articles are written on ketosis and at least get an idea of certain things.
Yeah, of what it does,
Right.
what it means, and how it works. And again, this is not, by any stretch of the imagination. I guess we can say your disclaimer is you are not a healthcare professional, and this is not healthcare advice. Never has been, never
just
would
an opinionated foodie.
Yeah, and which is cool, because I think that's like, the majority of everybody, especially the folks that are out here on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and everything else that's out there.
Right.
LinkedIn even. LinkedIn's becoming like, and you know what? Sorry,
I use that
different
too.
show. But
Well,
this is not the social media commentary show.
No,
This is,
but it's true though, because it's that to get yourself out there. It's amazing how viral one little thing can go, and sometimes not, or even like when you watch my shows and especially on Facebook Live, when you watch it in the first minute and a half or two, which doesn't seem like a long period of time, but when you are watching a show and it's nothing but silence for a minute and a half, that 90 seconds where we're setting up because we're waiting to go live on the internet show, that there's all these different things. So people click and then they click off simply because we're not, walking around like monkeys on the table, flipping whatever and making people want to see us. So it's, but social media and everything, even like you said with LinkedIn, it's crazy, but the amount of stock that people put in what they read without doing any research whatsoever just boggles my mind. Like, you're just going to change your entire lifestyle because someone said they lost 50 pounds on a keto diet. You need to do a little bit more research to make sure that it's right for you.
Yeah.
And then check with your healthcare provider to make sure that it's something that's safe for you to do before you just dive in and say, I'm never going to eat this, that, or the other again. Because, if someone puts you on a tomato diet and you don't know that you're sensitive to nightshades, you're going to poison yourself. So it's, but I'm not an expert. But I do like the constructive criticism. When people call me out, I'm wholeheartedly, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, because I don't want to give people misinformation. I don't want to feed that beast that leads people in the wrong direction. So if I misstep or I say something wrong, I mean, heck, half the times I just fumble my words because I can't remember where I'm at. But
that I think though that's kind of the cool thing about this entire my LoSo lifestyle, it's based on your personal
Mhm.
experience with this lifestyle and the fact that you were thrust into it out of a life and death situation.
Mhm.
That's what makes this so cool because are actually living. It's not just, oh, here's this thing that we're going to talk about because people like to live low sodium. Well, this is actually your life. So, in coming at it from that aspect, there's no one who's a better expert on their own life than the person living it, and that's
Exactly.
everybody.
Exactly.
So, but from that standpoint, I got your notes here. I'm looking at it. I'm getting hungry because
Mhm.
it's near lunchtime. But you wanted to talk about baking this week.
I did because I made some. One of the other groups I'm in, Foul Mouth Foodies, they have a challenge every week. I've talked about it before, and theirs was cupcakes. I'm not a baker. I like to cook. I love to cook. I love anything cooking. So I like to bake occasionally. I mean, who doesn't like cupcakes? Actually, there's one person at my work that doesn't like cupcakes, and I was confused by that statement.
Well,
But
they're wrong.
so I didn't want to just whip up a box of cupcakes, mostly because the box cupcakes, obviously, they're loaded in sodium. And then you add baking soda. So it's funny to me how many people are shocked when I say that baked goods have so much salt. Between the baking soda, because you need a leavening agent almost always to make it rise or fluffy or flaky or whatever it's going to be, it needs baking soda or baking powder or a combination of both.
Mm.
And then almost every single recipe calls for, a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons. It's a lot of salt. Considering your day should be a teaspoon of salt or less, and you just put a teaspoon in a batch of cookies. Yes, I know you're supposed to eat 1 or 2 cookies,
Yeah,
but
right.
I'd like someone to tell me who eats 1 or 2 cookies. I honestly thought that they ended, when they packaged the Oreos, I thought it was like a sleeve with
That
a
was the
serving.
serving. Yeah,
Like you get a
one
serving for
sleeve.
me and a serving for my husband, right? Isn't
Yeah,
that how it
one
works?
one sleeve per serving. That sounds reasonable.
But that's where like baking soda and baking powder, of course it's early and I'm not drinking coffee at the moment, but the amount of sodium in it. So you look at the back of it, even when you find the reduced sodium baking soda or powder, I think the reduced one, baking powder, is like 50 milligrams per serving. So you're like, oh, that's not that bad, right? 50
No,
milligrams per
yeah.
serving. Well, the recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of it. So you got to take 16 servings because a serving is 1/8 of a teaspoon. So now times that 50 by 16.
So, but okay, so that I'm
And
clear,
that's just a baking soda or baking powder.
is baking soda and baking is that salt?
By sodium carbonate. So it's not salt, it is sodium. So
So
it's
it's
salt is sodium and chloride
right. Okay.
or chlorine, and baking soda is bisodium carbonate. It's a sodium. It's just a different form of sodium.
So you have to watch that too.
Well, that's the thing, is that's where I say the difference between salt and dietary sodium. Sodium is a unstable metal compound, whatever. Again, I'm not a freaking scientist. I know the basics of all this stuff, and I probably failed whatever chemistry class I had. I'm not a school person either.
I got kicked out of
I did pass
chemistry
cooking. I
in
passed my
high
culinary
school.
classes.
Did you? That's cool.
But so yeah, sodium, there's a million different kinds of sodium. There's sodium fillers, there's obviously baking soda, baking powder. There are different forms of sodium, and I forget which one. Baking soda is bisodium carbonate, and baking powder is bisodium carbonate with, I think, cream of tartar added. So it's still, even with pills you take and different foods that have sodium fillers, and anytime you see a word that's 62,000 different characters long, but in the middle of it says sodium something or other, it's got sodium added to it. So that's where, and then in addition to that, the next thing it says is salt. So there's baking soda and then there's salt added. So it's different. It's 2 different doses of sodium and just in different chemical formats.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. Back
Right.
on the baking.
Right. So when you have,
Oh, I did not know that. Wow.
right, which is why whenever if you actually look at a package of cookies, like you can buy the big giant teacup saucer size cookies,
Yeah.
right before the checkout, the impulse buy thing.
Mm.
and it's either 1 or 2 cookies in a package. Well, it's always 1 serving is 1 cookie, and 1 cookie is like 350 milligrams or $350 out of your diet.
Wow.
So, and it's all that baking soda and the salt. So the salt in baking is purely a flavor enhancer. It serves no purpose for cookies, cakes, all that stuff. It is purely a flavor enhancer. It serves no purpose to the cake. It's just like any cake. You can take a basic cake recipe and turn it into a vanilla cake, a chocolate cake, a strawberry cake. You can add flavor enhancers to turn it into whatever cake you want. The basic structure and the leavening agents of the flour, eggs, milk, whatever you put in it, and baking soda is what gives you the cake structure itself. And then the salt or anything else that you add as a flavoring component.
Do you even need that? I mean,
it does make a difference. If
does
you
it?
taste, if I'll make you a batch of salted cookies and I'll make you a batch of unsalted cookies. So you can tell. So I add more vanilla or more flavoring agents to my baked goods when I make them, purely because of that exact fact. Because I'm not cooking with salt, I need to enhance those flavors in another fashion. So if it's 1 teaspoon of vanilla to make a batch of cookies, you add salt, it enhances that vanilla, it enhances that chocolate, it enhances all the flavors. So if I don't have the salt to enhance those flavors, then if I add a really good quality cocoa and really good quality vanilla, because you get what you pay for, and that's in anything in life. So if you start,
Yeah.
I mean, people look and
I've
they're like,
learned that the
oh,
hard way a
vanilla's really
lot.
expensive. Of course it's expensive. If you go harvest a vanilla bean and tell me why they're expensive, or cashews, all of the
Yeah.
nuts are so expensive. Well, go research how much effort it takes to create a
To get a
jar of
friggin'
mixed
nut.
nuts,
Yeah.
and you'll understand why it's expensive. So if you start with really good ingredients, but you have to use more of it to get that flavor that you would normally get by just adding salt to enhance it. So by taking out the salt, adding a little bit more of those flavor compounds, then you can get the same result. But you can notice the difference, especially if you're someone that is a salty, as we like to say, someone like you who's salted and is a salty and eats salted foods. So, but I fooled a lot of people. I cook for my crew at work every quarter, and no one ever notices that any of the food that I make doesn't have salt in it. And I know you guys, as time goes by, you've tasted more and more of my foods.
Yeah. In fact, you brought me those
jalapenos,
those pickled jalapenos today, and oh my gosh, those are freaking good.
Oh, thanks, Alex. I gave Alex a little tiny jar of my cranberry sauce. It's kind of like, it's more like a cranberry. When I say cranberry sauce, everybody thinks of the stuff that comes out of a can that even leaves the ribs on it when you stick it out of the can.
The gelatin kind of stuff.
That is actually jellied cranberries, which is why it holds its form. Like, I mean, it's literally a cranberry jello or jelly.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
The cranberry sauce I make is, and people seem to love or hate cranberries.
I like cranberries.
I see if I would have known that. I need a list of all the foods that you like and don't. I have a jar of cranberry sauce sitting in my fridge, and I wasn't going to bring it because people, they really do. They're very particular about cranberries because it's so tart.
Well, I'm like one of the few people in my family that actually does. Maybe it's an acquired. I don't know.
There's a sweet.
I like them.
You either have a sweet or a bitter palate, and you are a person that probably has more of a bitter palate because you like the spicy foods and the tart foods.
Well, I do. It
doesn't mean you don't like sweets,
but I do love sweets.
Yeah, just because you have a sweet palate or a tart.
Chocolate is my kryptonite. Yeah, it really is.
It doesn't mean that you don't like
Twinkies.
One or the other. It just means that the way in which things taste, like broccoli will taste different to you than it will to me, purely because of how your palate perceives things. But so in baked goods, salt is purely just flavor. So when you make waffles or cookies or cakes or any of that stuff, pancakes, it's purely for flavor.
Now, I'm going to interrupt you just a bit here, but Alex says I'm waiting for you to cook on air, and I'm like, whoa, that's actually, I don't know how we would make that happen in here.
We'd have to rent a kitchen because it's not easy.
It would have to be an offsite kind of thing.
It'd be a long show.
It might be. So maybe we tuck that in your back pocket and think about that sometime.
Side note, of course, obviously, being that I love to cook, I also watch all the food shows, and my husband and I watch all of these different things. And you see all these cooking challenges where they've got a half hour or 45 minutes. And my husband laughs because I can cook in a timely fashion. I really can. But I enjoy it. It's my kitchen is my happy place. It's my downtime. It leaves I can create stuff, and it's just my place. So, but it does I take my time. But if I had to, can I chop an onion fast? Can I do I sure can. I've been put under the gun. I used to help cater food and all that stuff.
Mm.
But if you put me on a cooking show, oh my gosh, it would be the messiest. It would be like giving a 5-year-old, and I can't even say that because 5-year-olds are on these cooking shows now and they outshow all of us. But yeah, that it'd be a long show because I don't cook fast.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll stick it in the back
Yeah,
pocket
right.
and think about that another
Live
time.
remote
But
from a kitchen somewhere, we'll find it.
so, but now I know in here you've got notes about, bread and breads and baking
So
with breads and all that kind of stuff. Your breads.
that's the difference. Baked goods, it's flavor enhancer. Bread is it actually does serve a purpose in bread. When you cook or when you bake a yeast typed product. So even if you're baking and it's donuts or something, if it's yeast based, using yeast to the leavening agent instead of baking soda, using salt actually retards the reaction of the yeast. So it makes it easier for bakers to not overproof their bread because it slows that process down. So a lot of recipes you can just flat out say just remove the salt. It's that easy. Well, there's a hint of truth to that. Like with baked goods, if you bake cookies, you can just remove the salt and still have a tasty cookie. But you're going to have a better cookie if you modify a couple other things, increase the vanilla or whatever to get a better flavor. But you can just take out salt. With a baked good, if you take out, or not baked good, with a bread or a yeast product, if you take out the salt, it changes the timing of how fast the yeast proofs, how fast your loaf rises, all of that stuff. Another episode for What's in Your Loaf. As soon as I said loaf, I was like, I'm thinking of another show. But it does. It changes it. So that's why a lot of people have such poor success with making bread when they go low salt, because they think they can just take out the salt and it's the same, and it's not. So you have to cut those times in half. So when it says, that's why a lot of old school recipes, when you bake bread, it says, let rise for 30 minutes or until dough is doubled, because so many different factors come into play. How the humidity level in your kitchen, the temperature in your kitchen, how if it's too dry, how much salt you've added. There's all of these different components that come into play when a dough actually rises. So there is kind of an art to it, which is why when you get good bread, it's really good bread. And then other bread, it's kind of like pizza. No, at least in my opinion, no bread is really bad. I love bread. So if you're a bread lover, that's kind of the same thing where you're like, okay, it's a piece of toast. It's not the greatest, but good bread is really good bread.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll agree with that.
It. So there really is a science behind that, and that's why they use salt in bread.
So
is there no salt in Little Debbie stack? Yeah, there's a lot of salt in those snacks. But yeah, so it took me a little tweaking. I actually just posted it this morning, my basic bread recipe, and it's a garlic bread recipe, just because I tend to use it more for my garlic cast iron rolls, or I use it for my actual rolls for like hamburger buns, like a sandwich roll. So instead of having that salt, I use roasted garlic to get that kind of flavor from it, so it just doesn't taste like raw dough. But you can take that garlic out, and I substitute cinnamon and a couple other things to make my cinnamon rolls. But that basic bread recipe is pretty simple. Once you get that basic down, you can make all sorts of different, you can mess with it and kind of tweak it. So I posted that this morning so that you can find that.
Huh. So Mitch Sheehan, pretzel buns with no salt, brisket, and 90-10 burger. So you're saying that's what you like?
Yeah, he's Mitch is a fabulous chef in his own right. The man can. Alex is probably gonna feast on this one. He can do crazy things with meat. He's got some low sodium bratwurst. I mean, there's certain things that are coveted in the low sodium world: sausages, bacons, any fermented or salted products like that you see a lot in Asian cuisines and soy sauce. The man can come up with some crazy recipes. So he's quite the, I guess you'd call it charcuterie. But he's got summer sausages, and he's a very talented man.
Wow.
Yeah. But that pretzel buns with no salt, they are tricky to make, and they're time sucks. I hate making pretzel buns. They're really good to make, but to get them perfect, they are, at least in my baking skill set, they're a pain in the ass to make, but they're really, really tasty. But that's why everybody likes pretzel buns now.
Well, see,
for the restaurant.
my wife likes. I don't actually. I don't like pretzels. I don't like pretzel buns. I don't like anything. Like, I don't mind like the big giant soft pretzels if I've got
Right.
something to dip it in. But it's not a go-to for me. I hate crunchy pretzels. I just do not like them. And pretzel buns, I'm just like, I'm not a fan. I never have been.
Even crunchy pretzels, again, if it's something I can dip and it's there, but I'd rather have potato chip or tortilla chip than I would have. So if I had the choice, pretzels wouldn't be my first choice. But the brisket 90-10 burger, that I would go for all day long. That's a fantastic, which is,
I've never had that. Sounds good. The brisket 90-10.
Yeah. So
that sounds
you
good.
You can ask your butcher to make your burger meat just about however you like. Mitch, on the other hand, I can guarantee you does all of his stuff. He's fantastic.
Wow. Hey, how you doing out there, Phil and Pamela? Hello from Texas. Well, hello right back. And Gary Hong over in Singapore. He says fly over to Singapore and do a cook-in.
Right.
That'd
be fantastic.
You know what? As soon as Mary gets famous enough here on my LoSo lifestyle, we'll get somebody to give her the tickets and fly her over, and maybe she can do a special low sodium cooking show there in Singapore.
That'd be fabulous. Yeah. So I did post a few recipes this morning. I posted my basic bread recipe.
Where can they find those?
My LoSo lifestyle on my Facebook page. Also, a large portion of my recipes are in the Facebook group that I've been part of since I got diagnosed, Shaking the Salt. And so you can search my name, and about 1 billion different recipes will show up on there. But I'm slowly adding all of my stuff to my Facebook page as I get time. So today I shared my bread recipe, my crepes. So crepes are something that I absolutely love, because even though it's a little sweeter, they freeze so well. So I make them, and by the time I take one out of the pan and put it on a cooling rack thing, as I'm making the other one, the first one's cool enough to put on a piece of parchment paper, and then another parchment on top, take the next one out of the pan, put it on the cooling rack. So I got this little system down, and you can just freeze them with a piece of parchment paper in between them. There's no defrosting. There's no nothing. You literally, I want crepes right now. Literally right now, I go in my freezer. You take 2 crepes, 3 crepes, whatever you want out of the freezer. By the time you put them on a plate and pull out whatever cheese or fruit, or even if a savory like mushrooms or onions or any pickle, peppers, anything you want to put in them. And hell, I've even taken just jam, like flat out, jarred jelly jam you buy at the grocery store, and spread it on there like toast. By the time you get out what you're doing, the crepe is thawed and pliable to where you can roll it up, throw it in the microwave for 30 seconds and eat it. So I'm a huge fan of crepes. So I did post my crepe recipe. And I think it might actually be the thumbnail for today's episode on my page for the event. Cool. But I did post a few of those recipes. And if anybody has any questions, obviously you're always welcome to reach out to me and ask, either with my recipes, or if you have anything that you want covered on the show. I'm game for all of the above.
Very cool. So now, with breads, pizza dough, waffles, crepes, cookies, cupcakes, desserts,
you can make almost all of them in advance too.
Yeah.
Like I make pizza dough, even your bread dough, you can make the dough in advance, and because you rise it essentially twice in bread making. And to teach people how to make bread, that would be a whole show. So Google how to make bread, and you'll see all the steps involved in making bread. And I'm by no means telling you that bread is an easy thing to do. I struggle with it. I've made it 1 million times. It's a process.
Well, we have a bread maker at home. We haven't used it in a long time.
This recipe works fantastically. So I use my bread maker to do all of it, especially now that I have back issues. I don't like to knead dough. It's you think that you can knead dough, and then you think that 7 minutes isn't a long time until you have to knead dough for 7 minutes. It's exhausting, and I'm too lazy for that. So I let my bread maker do all of that. And then instead of cooking it in my bread maker, I take it out of the bread maker once it's done rising, put it in my pans, however I want it, loaf pans, roll pans, however you want it. Heck, form it into a big old log and just throw it in on a sheet and throw it in your oven. And I bake it that way. So I don't bake it in my, I don't like the tall bread loaf. I like an actual loaf of bread.
You don't like the tall.
Right, because in the bread maker, it makes that big
yeah.
cylinder tower, like a skyscraper type
Yeah.
loaf of bread. So I use my bread maker for the
I
whole
actually liked
first
that
process.
because it made a nice big old sandwich.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Right. I can just picture you slicing it down the middle and make a carb overload sandwich with bacon in the middle. Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds fantastic. That sounds excellent.
No, it's just bacon with a couple pieces of bread.
Right.
You know, I mean, it takes a pound of bacon to make one
Right.
sandwich.
See, my argument is it's a half pound of bacon. So you can take a pound of bacon and then there's a sandwich for me and my husband.
No.
That's funny.
No.
But you can make pizza is super easy. Like if you make it and you actually par bake the dough. So it's just cooked, not golden brown, like literally just cooked. And I've even done it where I'll bake it with like navy beans in the middle. So it looks like an actual, like it's got the rim of a pizza crust and the center is flat, and you freeze them as that kind of pizza crust. So if you want pizza, all you got to do is pull that out, put your sauce and your toppings on it, throw it in the oven, and it's just like making a frozen pizza.
So with the navy beans?
Well, I don't do the navy beans. The navy beans is purely just to hold down the dough when you par bake it.
Oh,
so
I get it. I get it.
And then you just dump the navy beans. So, but people do that a lot of times. There's a lot of different uses for weighting the navy beans.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. I thought, okay, navy bean pizza dough. That sounds weird.
Well, you could make there's a
but I mean, for the low carb stuff, I've had like the cauliflower pizza dough and then the cheese pizza dough.
Mm-hmm.
That was freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That was super good. My wife
Probably
did all
super
that
high
stuff.
in sodium, but yeah, it's
really
yeah,
for
too.
your purposes,
Yes.
it would not fly.
No, it would be heavenly. I'm a cheese addict.
But see,
I love cheese.
and I'm evidently very salted.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're actually right here at the bottom of the hour. So folks, do want to remind you are listening to 216 the net, 216thenet.com. You can go online, click listen live on the website, or of course you can just download the app, 21.6 the net, not the nap.
No naps.
No naps. It's about time for a nap for me. 21.6 the net app. Find it on your favorite app store, wherever that might be. Works on any smartphone, any tablet, any pad. You can listen to us wherever you are, even Bluetooth it in your car. I know a lot of people who do that. It's really kind of cool to know that folks are driving along and listening to my LoSo lifestyle with Mary Shep. And of course, you can catch Mary's show. You can catch What's in Your Loaf today at 3:30. On Wednesdays, you can catch McHenry County Business Spotlight with Kent Jones and Alex Kolkowski here on 21.6 the net. And of course, Dream Home Ninjas every Fridays at noon with Mike, Josh, and Keith for really cool home improvement stuff. And again, those are guys that just happen to do a lot of that. And it's really cool to hear from people who enjoy doing things and having fun with certain subjects and certain things in their life, or just living it. Like, again, my LoSo lifestyle with Mary Shep here. So, Mary, why don't we kind of get moving through here to, you got a note about getting used to salt, getting used to it.
It's funny. It is getting used to salt. You know how many times a day I hear or someone comments on a post in one of the low sodium groups that you just get used to not having salt. Well, you had to get used to having salt in the first place. You weren't born salting your food. You weren't born cooking with salt. Your parents cooked with salt, subsequently feeding you salted food. But if you actually, a lot of us like the Cheez-Its or cheese balls, cheese puffs, it's a salted rice puff covered in a cheese flavored product, and they're heavenly. I love them. I would eat those big giant tubs that I sell at my store. I would eat that whole bucket given half the chance. but it is really, really high in salt. And in the baby food section at the grocery store, they have a little jar of cheese puffs that are actually low sodium. Why? Because you don't need to salt a baby. So you just, you know what I
Get over here,
that's my
kid.
point. Like when you make food for your kid, anytime you've ever made food for your children, you might salt your recipe.
Okay.
Because you've been trained to do so. All of your recipe, every cook on the planet's always, all culinary recipes, they said you got to salt. So, but when you make that and you put it on a plate and you put it in front of your kid, how many times have you ever grabbed a salt shaker or a pepper shaker and walked over to that kid, that 2-year-old sitting there, and be like, "Oh wait, I gotta season your food for you." You
You don't.
never,
You
not
don't do
one
that.
time. So when people tell me you get used to not having salt, well, you freaking got used to eating it in the first place. Like if you, so it's like,
I mean, I guess that's right.
Right.
You know, because you don't.
well, I
Yeah.
mean, so it is a flavor enhancer. It does. I'm not denying that. It enhances the flavor of food, but I mean, at the same time, drugs enhance things too. And you don't, I mean, you're not adding cocaine to your eggs in the morning. So it's, I mean,
Well, most people.
yeah,
I mean, I imagine
that's a
you
different
probably
show.
just gave someone an idea.
I
But yeah,
know.
that
That's a
is
different show.
yeah, that's an entirely
Yeah.
different kind of show altogether.
That is not my LoSo lifestyle. That is not my lifestyle. But you know, that's what I mean. There's, when people say that you get used to it, you get used to a lot of things. You get used to sugar, you get used to salt, you get used to spicy. I gave you jalapenos. I can't do that. I've gotten better at spicy foods because I'm low sodium, because spice helps enhance flavors.
Mm-hmm.
So people like you and my husband, who, I mean, literally my husband, when we grew habanero peppers last year, I posted a picture of a salad with our dinner one day. It was like in the background, and someone commented, "Oh, I love the mini peppers you can get at the store." So, well, those aren't mini sweet peppers. those are habanero peppers from our garden. And
That's
someone
probably
responded, was like, "Who the hell puts habanero peppers on their salad?" My husband.
Yeah, he's a smart dude.
Yeah. Well, he'll be happy to hear that.
Well, that's how you should eat a salad. It's got to taste like something.
Well, that's the thing, is like, just him slicing those habaneros in my kitchen, the oil released in my kitchen made my eyes burn just from him slicing them up, because
Really?
I'm sensitive. I can't, even when I made the pickles for that I brought,
Mm-hmm.
I have to have him. I'm so sensitive to the capsaicin oil that my fingers will burn for days.
Wow.
So unless I put on 2 pairs of cooking gloves, like the food safe rubber gloves or whatever, I have him cut all the jalapenos and habaneros and anything. Even if I make a salsa and I only put 1 jalapeno in there just to add a little kick to it and have it be a mild salsa, he still has to cut it up, because that little bit. And of course, every single time, he's a grown ass man, and every time he plays with hot peppers, he does something stupid and touches something he shouldn't touch. I'm just saying, if you play with peppers, wash your hands, because it's not only horrible to get pepper juice in your eyes, there's other places you don't want to get pepper juice.
I imagine so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that does go with a little bit of lesson learned kind of knowledge,
Well,
the wisdom on eating spicy foods.
Well, muscle memory apparently overrides knowledge, because you get the habit of doing things, and then you forget.
I mean, yeah, if you're, I get that, I understand it, but I mean, I've been eating spicy foods for so long. Now, I did have to cut way back because of, ulcer stuff, but I love spicy food.
So something a lot of people don't know, other than the fact that, spicy obviously helps enhance food. So instead of salt, you can skip having all of the salted product and add a little bit of heat to your stuff. And like me, I've gotten used to having salt or spicy stuff a little bit more, so I can handle literally quite a bit more than I used to. But spicy foods, people think that it is the cause of ulcers and things, and there is some truth to it. But spicy foods actually is an anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
Overall in your body, it helps reduce the inflammation in your body.
When you develop the ulcer thing,
right,
having spicy food is kind of like having an open wound and then touching it.
Right.
And
that doesn't cause them. It will aggravate them.
It aggravates them. Yeah. It aggravates them tremendously.
Correct.
But yeah, So now you've got a list of things
Mhm.
that people can use. Why don't you go through that here?
So in addition to spicy stuff to make up for not having salt, citrus. I mean, people they're used to using citrus on fish and stuff like that. But to have a lemon or lime squeezed on just vegetables. The other one I was turned on to is I got citrus powder. So it's essentially like lime juice, only in a powder form. So if you make homemade French fries, homemade potato chips, anything like that, you take that citrus powder and like some chipotle, smoked chipotle powder, and you've got a spicy potato chip or spicy French fries. They're fantastic. And you don't even or popcorn. That's the only way I like popcorn. I used to hate popcorn, but adding that citrus powder is like having salted popcorn.
It doesn't taste fruity?
No, because it's the citrus part of it. It's the citric acid that they have taken into the powder. It's not necessarily the lemon, the lime, or the orange. So it's not like you're getting orange popcorn. It's that the citric acid component, that acidity. It's the same like I use sun-dried tomatoes a lot. There's some sun-dried tomatoes you can find. A lot of them are loaded with salt. They're seasoned, like Italian sun-dried tomatoes. They're seasoned. So you have to pay attention to the label like you always do. But sun-dried tomatoes, the egg bites that I made.
Yeah, those were good.
And they taste salted. And my husband even says, like, it tastes like, did you put salt in it because you're bringing it to the studio? And I said, no, it's the same stuff. It's because of those sun-dried tomatoes. Tomatoes are acidic. And when you sun dry them, it's like concentrating them down in the little itty bitty bites. So that acidic flavor is what adds that salted component. So when I make a pasta dish with, like I have an asparagus dish or the Brussels sprouts that I made that Kent enjoyed,
mm-hmm.
I add those sun dried tomatoes because without getting ruining the dish with a can of tomatoes and all the liquid that comes with it, that it adds a flavored component and it's fantastic. One, I actually posted a while ago a joke about garlic cloves and how funny it is when people request one garlic clove in a recipe. And you meant to say like 42 garlic cloves in a recipe because I can't remember ever using a single solitary garlic clove in any of my recipes. And even when I write up the recipe, I write a realistic amount of garlic. But in reality, I use probably 3 times the amount of that garlic just because I'm a garlic slut. I love garlic.
Wow.
I love everything about garlic. But roasted garlic, fresh garlic is spicy. It's legitimately spicy, which can be used and I add fresh, raw, grated garlic to my mashed potatoes, and it's fantastic. But roasted garlic is sweet. So if I'll roast whole heads of garlic, just chop the head off, roast it in the oven, and save it and keep it in a jar in my fridge because you can put it on just about anything. It adds a different flavor. So it's not necessarily a salted flavor, but it adds a flavor so that your food isn't bland. And that's what people are missing. When you eat something and it's bland, you want to add something to it to make it not bland. Yeah. It doesn't have to be salted. It just has to be something more.
Yeah.
But the one that I've touched on before is the Maillard reaction. That is actually, the actual definition is it's a chemical reaction which occurs between amino acids and reducing sugars in the presence of heat that results in the browning of food while forming aromas and flavors. So essentially when you sear a steak, it changes the chemical compound of the outside of that steak, or even vegetables. You can even sear fruits. Put pineapple on your grill. It's fantastic. All of those different things in it. That Maillard reaction gives you a salted flavor of sorts. So that's why I don't really cook with a crock pot anymore. No. Because it's another step, which is why I love my cast iron. Because with a crock pot, I have to sear the roast or whatever I'm making first to get that Maillard reaction, to get that salted flavor, and to get all the bits on the bottom of the pan that add that flavor. Brown is flavor. So I have to sear it in one pan just to add it to a crock pot to let it cook all day. Well, I could do the same thing in my Dutch oven. Yeah, I could sear it in the Dutch oven and then add all the stuff to it and then stick it in my oven and leave it be and cook for hours.
Hmm.
I know the argument is that, well, you can leave a crock pot sitting on your counter all day while you're at work. I am not leaving a cooking device turned on in my house while I'm not home. Call me nuts, call me crazy. I don't care. I just am not going to do it. I'm not. I know it's not an
does it
open
freak
flame
you
or anything.
out, or
It does. It's just one of those things that I don't know. I know that my refrigerator is plugged in and running while I'm not there, and it's not going to burn my house down. I'm just not a proponent of leaving. I don't know. Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
weird. Call
we
me
do
weird.
that routinely. My wife cooks for our dogs,
Okay.
and almost everything they eat is made in a crock pot. And we've found it's healthier for the
Sure.
dogs and actually cheaper than buying pre-made
Right.
dog food.
Right.
But she'll pork, beef, chicken. She'll throw it in the crock pot, turn it on, and that happens 2-3 times a week. And
Right.
she makes big crock pots full, and that usually feeds them for 2-3 days at a time.
Sure.
And yeah, and I've actually even eaten it on occasion. It's
see.
good.
I'm just, and it's
It's the dog food in our house, but it's good.
what we had. Our dog had gotten sick when he was younger. We had some issues figuring out what was causing his stomach problems, and the same thing where I had to feed him a very bland diet of ground beef and mashed potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how many times it's like, all right, this all goes in a jar for my dog, and then this one goes on a plate, and I'm going to add some cheese to it, and I'm going to have ground beef and mashed potatoes. Technically, it's dog food.
Yeah,
but it's also ground beef and mashed potatoes. So
yeah, and my I love pork, but pork does not love me, except for bacon. I can deal with bacon and ham, but like pork shoulders and those kind of things,
it might be the nitrates.
it might be.
A lot of times the curing process and things like that, and hams and stuff, it might be the nitrates.
But because I can do ham and bacon no problem, but actual other pork, just I like it. It does not like me.
Right.
But enough about pork and Pete. We've got maybe about not quite 14 minutes left here today, and you've got a note about famous people.
I do. So as I talked about, you get used to you get used to not having salt. You still want it, you still whatever, you get used to it. I'm not denying that salt is a flavor enhancer. And if I could salt my food all with reckless abandon, I probably would. I used to. I would also, live on coffee and ice cream and grilled cheese sandwiches if I could. But so Ann Burrell is a famous chef on the Food Network, on everywhere, and I watch her all the time. I think she's fantastic. But she wrote a book, and in her book, she wrote, "Salt is a flavor enhancer, and it brings out the natural flavors in food. It makes things taste more. If you don't cook with salt, you will never be a good cook." There, I said it, accept it, move on. So I agree with her in the sense that salt is a flavor enhancer. The saying that you will never be a good cook without salt, I surely hope this woman never has a heart condition, a liver condition, a kidney condition, a cancer. I hope that she is super healthy the rest of her life and never has to worry about water retention or any of these things, or blood pressure. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of things that having a highly salted diet can affect. So I hope that she never has a diet restriction. And she's right. Salt and makes things better. And you should. And on occasion, I still do season after the fact, because if you do it after the fact, it hits your palate faster, and you still get that taste of a little tiny little bit of salt crystals. But to say that you can't be a good cook if you don't, I'm sorry. I don't mean to brag, but I know a lot of people who've tasted my food, and I've yet to have anybody tell me that I'm a bad cook or I will never be a good cook because I don't have salt.
I'm one of those folks, and I've tasted your food, and it's pretty damn good. Those little egg things are freaking phenomenal. The pickles that you made, really, really good. And then
The Brussels sprouts that you wouldn't eat that Ken loved.
yeah, that Ken loved the Brussels.
That wasn't
And
my
it's
fault,
got
though.
nothing to do with
Yeah,
you.
you just don't like sprouts.
Brussels sprouts just shouldn't exist.
They're so
They're a
good.
wrong thing.
Yeah, it's not.
Those and bananas, can't stand them.
So I'm on the banana page with you. Even though I eat bananas all the time for the potassium.
Yeah, you're brave. I give you credit for that, because if you hate them as much as I do, bananas are the grossest thing in the world.
They're
I'd
I
rather.
wouldn't call it grossest, but they're up there. They're just the texture, everything about them.
The smell, the texture,
especially if it's
everything.
Banana flavoring, like a banana candy. Just the smell of it makes me want to puke. But it is the fastest way for me to get a balanced amount of sugars, carbs, fiber, especially when you eat greener bananas. They're actually lower on the glycemic index, so they're actually pretty good for people who have diabetes. Because diabetics, you got to watch the sugars. Well, a ripe banana is loaded with sugars because it's ripening and everything in it's turning into sugars. It kind of turns itself into its own banana flavored syrup.
Well, and
so
also
I prefer riper bananas because they don't taste as banana-y.
Yeah.
So it's more like a starchy potato kind of thing than it is a banana. So I prefer greener bananas.
Well, I prefer none. But those jalapenos that you made, the pickled jalapenos, they're really good.
Gary asked, was the dill bread previously on the What's in Your Loaf
episode
made by me? That was made by Sarah from Wanda's Bakery, which I've had her baked goods, and they are absolutely. She's got an apple fritter to die for.
Yeah, that was for another show, and that was actually made by Sarah, who is a master pastry chef. And that really was for What's in Your Loaf, a different show.
Breads, though.
Have you?
I have made plenty of dildos.
Wow. Yeah, that was new to me. And I even tasted it, and it wasn't bad. It's certainly something I'd never get again.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never put that in my mouth again, not on purpose.
Right.
But it wasn't the problem was not that it was bad. It is that it was friggin' weird.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, why is this pickle the consistency of bread? It was a complete it was a brain scramble. And now it probably would have been really good with like some butternut squash soup or something like that.
Right.
But it was friggin' weird.
It's funny because I use dill a lot, dill seed, and things that people wouldn't think. There's so many times that I would cook something and my husband's like, what is that flavor? I can't like put my finger, because he's gotten pretty good at, he's got a pretty broad palate, and he could probably win a tasting competition. The man can surprisingly pick out. He hates fennel. I can put one fennel seed in a giant 8-quart crock of sauce, and it's got fennel in it. I don't want it. He can taste it. But I use dill seed in a lot of my cooking. A very, very small amount goes a long way, but it adds this back end flavor that it's not dill. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I cook with it actually quite a bit outside of making dill pickles. But I have made a fair amount of dill in like the sandwich rolls, because if you're making like my version of a Reuben with I can't do corned beef because corning beef is actually curing it in a salt solution, and I can't obviously do that, which sucks because that's one of my favorite things is corned beef and cabbage.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like it. Person. I don't. The cabbage is fine. That's fine. Corned beef, I do. I love a good Reuben. I really do.
Right. So I've made, that's my version of I've done a corned beef and a cabbage, and I made rolls that were dill rolls, but it's not as heavily laden as that dill loaf was. But there's another person that I read a thing about him recently, Kevin Smith. He did Clerks. He's a film producer, writer, comedian, just an all-around hilarious dude.
Yeah.
I've never met him, so I know it sounds like I'm talking like I met the guy for coffee this morning. We just stalk him on Facebook occasionally. He seems like a cool cat, but he lost a lot of weight recently. He had a heart attack sometime in the last year or so, I believe. And there was a post that was a picture of him heavier and a picture of him skinnier, and said, he did keto. And it was just funny because I was talking about keto last week. And I'm not discrediting. A lot of people that I know are on keto, and when done properly, and under the guise of a doctor, it can be very beneficial. But that's where you, again, taking too much stock in what people say. Like if you get all butthurt because Ann Burrell says you're never going to be a good cook unless you use salt, or Kevin Smith, when you read something that says he did keto and lost all this weight in a week, and he didn't. He walks his dog.
Yeah.
He went vegan, and he sticks to Weight Watchers. Me personally, I wish that Weight Watchers didn't put so much salt in their made meals, because they are kind of heavier in salt. It doesn't mean they're super high. They're still within restrictions because it is a diet program. But they could find other ways to reduce the amount of salt in them. However, he found his own thing and he stuck to it.
Yeah.
And that's all I ever try and tell people is, if you take what everybody says, but do your research and figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And it's so easy to get or let people discredit or discourage you.
It is. And, one thing you should always bear in mind, if you're going to go on some kind of diet, your goal is, improved health in any form, in any fashion, consult a dietitian, consult a doctor, consult someone who specializes in that. It's a really good idea. I mean, I've been on and off all kinds of different types of food restrictions for probably over the course of the last, 10 years now. It's been, my dietary restrictions have been across the board. I've had to completely cut artificial sweeteners.
Sure.
I've had to completely cut bleached flour for a period of time. I've had to completely cut I had to cut coffee at one point in time, and that's excruciating because I live on that stuff.
That'd be hard for me.
But and then the whole low carb thing, and I had gone to natural sugars. Then I had to go through the whole dealing with the friggin' ulcer stuff in a natural. I wanted to go with the food route. I didn't want to do the surgery kind of thing.
I didn't want to do pills.
I didn't want to do any of that kind of stuff. So
you find what works for you, and that's the other thing is with doctors. So a lot of my issues, especially my latest thing with my back, and first thing, well, we're going to put you on this. No. Let me figure it out. And if you don't agree with what your doctor says, don't be scared to get a second opinion. They know a lot, but they don't know everything. And you know your body better than anybody else. And if you want to take a holistic approach and they're not going to support that, then find a different doctor. Yeah. Don't let them discourage you simply because of the fact that they have a PhD behind their name. You can find somebody. And I want to touch here. Mitch had said you can make corned beef. You can. And this is why I love Mitch, because anything anybody wants. I love corned beef and cabbage. And he's shipped me corned beef. He vacuum sealed it, shipped me a piece. It was fabulous.
Wow.
But it's not for the average everyday home cook. But you can make, if you are determined, you can make anything you want. So if you're low sodium, low sugar, low whatever, and that's with anything, if you're determined, you can make it. You can do it. You can figure out a way to have what you want instead of just giving up. But it's kind of why, I was inspired. That's why I brought up Kevin Smith. I was inspired by the fact that he fought back and said, no, I didn't do that. I found what worked for me.
Yeah.
And I want to give where credit is due and not have everybody jump on this bandwagon, because, you feed the beast of false information, and you just need to find what works for you and stick to it.
Yeah, you really do. So we got we're right at the 2-minute mark here. What do we got coming up next week?
I have a whole list of all of these different things that from week to week, and it's so funny because it depends on my mood the day before the show about what I want to talk about. Because it's funny, I wanted to talk about the whole, Ann Burrell saying you can't be a good cook unless you use salt last week, and I didn't. Probably because in the backdrop I was a little angry about some other things, and you're human, so it's like if you touch on something you disagree with and you've already got kind of a pissed off nature about you might want to you curb it a little bit and pick another day. So as I go through and I read all these posts, and I mean, if you guys have any suggestions, feel free, post it on my page, ask me the questions, go to my LoSo Lifestyle.
Yeah, we popped that up there just a bit
yeah.
ago, so definitely
Because
go
I have a
to
million
my LoSo
topics and I have a
Lifestyle.
million things, and I read through all these posts about, like with the what's about iodine. I would have never thought in a million years to talk about, I know that I'm getting enough iodine, but I wouldn't think to talk about it because I live this every day. So it's not as easy for me to think of what you might want to know, especially people who just start out. When you first start in a low sodium or low sugar, low carb, when you go to a doctor, because it's always an emergency situation. It's usually not something that builds up.
You don't plan on it.
Right.
So we'll say goodbye for now, at least on 21.6 The Net, and we'll be back next week with My LoSo Lifestyle and Mary Shep. All right, and we're actually clear from 21.6 The Net.
Jay and Silent Bob, I love Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, Jay and Silent Bob, but here on Facebook Live, Jay and Silent Bob, I love that.
I know.
Gary, we'll catch you again next week.
Thanks for watching, Mitch.
And Mitch, really, that's very cool.
Alex.
Hopefully everybody jumps in here again next week, but be sure to share this, like this, and actually, none of you on Facebook knew, but we also stream the show on our new YouTube channel, where we actually had somebody tuned in. YouTube is super new here for 21.6 The Net, but you can catch My LoSo Lifestyle with Mary Shep over on the 21.6 The Net YouTube channel, as well as here on Facebook. And again, thanks for everybody for jumping in here. Always, throw your thoughts in here. Pamela said, great to brighten soups too, talking about the spices. That's, man, any kind of food you think of or any kind of thoughts you have, let her know. Go to My LoSo Lifestyle here on Facebook. Join the page. Already more than 800 people have checked in and like the page, but definitely do that. So, and again, we'll see you guys next week. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show,
let me know.
Let her know. So, because at some point she may be sitting on this side of the table, and you can be sitting on that side of the table. So we'll make that happen.
Some plans for that.
So, absolutely. All right. Take care, folks. Have a good time.